The waiter walked towards her table, holding the ring with the same delicacy as an executioner holds his sword, while I watched her, from afar, with a calm that even I found unlikely. The restaurant was packed, full of laughter and clinking wine glasses, but to me, it was as if time had stopped the moment I saw that frozen expression on his face. She first saw me out of the corner of her eye, then fixed her gaze on the ring he was handing her. Her eyes widened, and in that instant, I knew she understood. That wedding ring wasn't just a ring, it was a silent announcement that I knew everything. It was the warning that our marriage was over. For months, I was the spectator of a play where I was the only one who didn't know the script. Endless outings, cell phone messages that never seemed to be just work stuff, discreet laughs in the middle of the night, as if each laugh was a silent confession. I noticed every detail. But I continued anyway, pretending not to notice, waiting for her to say something. For her to confess, for her to give some explanation that, however false, would save me the trouble of putting the pieces together. But she never did. And, little by little, I found myself trapped in a game that I no longer wanted to participate in, but that I couldn't let go by. I would let her know what it was like to be cheated on, in front of everyone, in front of the one she believed was true happiness. It wasn't just wounded pride or ruined love, it was trust thrown to the wind like old paper. I still remember the first time we met, the way she laughed at my lame jokes and held my hand like we were inseparable. They were memories that used to warm me, but now they burned like embers, setting everything on fire. And in the back of my mind, I remembered that prenuptial contract, that piece of paper lovingly signed years ago, that now appeared as an unexpected solution. She would lose everything, everything for which he lied, cheated, pretended. And I knew that this was the outcome she never imagined when she started that dirty game. The waiter finally reached the table. I saw her lover, relaxed, laughing at something he had just said, completely oblivious to what was about to happen. She looked up, and it was at that moment that she realized, I was there, watching every second, every reaction, with a look she had never seen before. The smile disappeared from her face like a flame being extinguished, replaced by an expression of absolute horror. She knew that the impact of that alliance was not just the pain of the breakup, but a reflection of what was to come, the brutal reality that awaited her, the consequences she feared so much. And that was all she could whisper, her voice wavering, as her eyes filled with tears, a mix of shock and pleading. The lover, confused, looked from one to the other, trying to understand, but unable to put together the pieces that only I had completed. I wanted to laugh at the irony, but instead I stood firm, unshakable. It was a silence that spoke more than any words. I wasn't there to argue, to give explanations. There was no more dialogue, the alliance was my last word, the final point of a story that she herself had decided to end. As I left the restaurant, I let everyone's eyes follow me, feeling the weight of judgment, but I didn't care. All I wanted was reassurance that she knew what she had lost. She had sacrificed our past, our history, for a fragile and empty illusion, and now she was left with nothing but her own guilt. The next step, which she could not even imagine, was already underway, one last piece that would take away what she had left, the material comfort that she believed was rightfully hers. Little did she know that every penny, every asset, was protected. I wouldn't let her leave with anything, just like she left me with nothing when she decided to betray me. As I walked away, I visualized the shock that would follow upon discovering the clause. That night, what she didn't know yet, but would soon know, is that betrayal, in addition to destroying what we had, would take away everything she took for granted. Welcome to the channel. Here, there is no room to justify betrayals. Each story told is fictional, but it carries a truth. Betrayal is a poison that destroys lives, ruins relationships and leaves deep scars. Get ready to hear an intense story, where every action has its consequences. Adjust your headset and dive into a web of secrets and shocking revelations. Good story. Adam Turner always believed he had found the love of his life in Laura. They met at a party their senior year of college, and it was as if fate had paused to let them meet. Laura had an easy smile and a lightness that enchanted him. A talented painter, she was intense and brought passion to every detail, from the way she mixed colors to the way she pronounced each word. Adam, on the other hand, was a practical and focused businessman, with a calm and introspective personality, characteristics that made their relationship even more balanced over the years. Adam and Laura's marriage was, for a long time, the union of two people who seemed destined for each other. Spontaneous trips and conversations that lasted into the early hours brought them closer and closer together. Adam felt that he had found in Laura the perfect woman to share his life with. He had built a solid career and was proud of every achievement, but it was with Laura that he shared his most secret dreams. Together they bought a house that they carefully renovated, every detail, from the color of the walls to the garden with carefully chosen flowers, was a reflection of both. Time, however, brought changes. Laura, always restless, began to expand her social circle, driven by the desire to grow as an artist and influenced by the need to feel more active and recognized. It was natural for Adam to feel a certain discomfort with the increase in night outs and the attention she now devoted to cultural events and art galleries. He tried to ignore the discomfort, attributing it to a phase of self-discovery that everyone, after all, had the right to experience. As the years passed, Adam immersed himself in work, a way of convincing himself that it was necessary to guarantee their stability. He firmly believed in the balance they had built. Whenever possible, he went out of his way to make their moments special, with dinners, short trips, and unexpected gifts. Laura, in turn, was grateful, but often seemed distant, with her mind far away, as if she were absent. Adam noticed these moments of separation, but chose to think that it was just tiredness, a need for space. Adam had unshakable trust in Laura, but, like any human being, he was also susceptible to the insecurities that arise in everyday life. In rare moments, when Laura was especially reserved, a pang of uncertainty would hit him, but he would quickly shake it off. He remembered how their relationship had been built on trust and love, and that was enough to suppress any doubts. The house they had built, full of memories and dreams, was now the stage for a different atmosphere, almost imperceptible but undeniable. Deep conversations gave way to short, quick dialogues, and the silences between them increased. At one point, Adam began to wonder when things changed, but he could never quite pinpoint a specific moment. The change, like the wear, had been gradual, a small detour on a road that had once seemed so straight. One night, Laura arrived later than usual from a gallery where she was exhibiting her paintings. Adam was waiting for her in the living room, with a glass of wine in his hand, visibly tired, but maintaining a welcoming appearance. Laura walked through the door, dropping her bag on the floor and sighing, as if carrying the weight of the world. Adam tried to break the ice, starting a conversation about the exhibition, asking how the night was, who she had met. Laura responded with short, scattered sentences, but Adam insisted. "Was everything okay?" he asked, trying unsuccessfully to connect. Laura hesitated before answering, something he had rarely noticed before. "Yes, it was a good night," she said, without looking directly at him. Adam felt something was wrong, but he didn't press further. He knew Laura well enough to know that pressuring her would only make her shut down even more. At the same time, he couldn't escape the growing discomfort. In that silence, he perceived an invisible barrier that separated them, a barrier that he didn't know how to cross. Despite his doubts, Adam tried to maintain harmony and remembered the moments of complicity they shared. Each memory was an effort to restore what he felt was fraying between them. He still loved her, but he feared that this love would be like sand slipping through his fingers, falling apart without him being able to do anything to stop it. Laura, on the other hand, was increasingly caught up in her own world, her desire to expand her artistic horizons, and the new people she met in art circles. She was fascinated by the possibilities that freedom promised. Laura still loved Adam, but she felt like something in her had changed. The security he offered was no longer enough, she longed for something she couldn't even name. Over the months, small gestures and glances revealed this silent distance. Adam watched her with the patience of someone who hoped that she would find herself again, that this separation would be just a passing phase. He expected her to return to being that woman he had known and with whom he had shared the best moments of his life. When their eyes met, he still saw the woman he loved, but this image was increasingly accompanied by a weight of uncertainty. The tension between them was subtle, but it was there, like a shadow that was beginning to envelop their relationship. When he was alone, Adam often found himself reflecting on the decisions they had made, the paths they had chosen, and wondering if anything could have been different. He felt a kind of nostalgia for the future they had planned together, as if that future was fading away without him being able to grasp it. But, despite everything, he maintained hope, believing that, with time and patience, they could overcome any difficulty. He knew Laura well enough to know that she was complex and that sometimes she needed to lose herself to find herself. What he didn't know, and feared finding out, was whether this time she would find her way back to him. Adam tried to convince himself that his relationship with Laura was just going through a difficult phase, a phase from which they would both emerge stronger. He knew that she was a woman full of life and desires, and her involvement in the artistic world had always been an essential part of her personality. But, little by little, he began to feel that something was different. Her departures became more frequent, her responses became more vague, and even the casual encounters between them seemed rehearsed, as if she were there in body but absent in spirit. Every time I tried to create a connection, I received evasive or distracted responses. He began to feel that instead of being by her side, it was as if he was always meters away, trying to reach her. One night, Laura arrived even later than usual, smelling perfume that wasn't hers. She entered the house with a tired look, but without the usual exhaustion, without the glow of someone who had had a long day at work. Adam watched her silently as she took off her shoes and walked up the stairs without saying a word. He remained sitting in the living room, listening to her footsteps that were lost on the second floor, while the silence in the house seemed deeper and more distressing. That night was the breaking point for Adam. He could no longer ignore the discomfort, could no longer pretend there wasn't a growing emptiness between them. The next day, Adam decided to follow his intuition, and for the first time in years of marriage, he took her cell phone. He hesitated, feeling like he was invading the privacy of someone he loved, but a greater force was driving him. He knew that if he continued in the dark, this emptiness would consume him. When he unlocked the phone, he found a constant stream of messages and calls from an unknown number. His previously rational mind began to spin toward a scenario he never imagined possible. Adam resisted the urge to confront her right away. Instead, he began to closely watch her every move. The schedules, the excuses, the art events and the sporadic outings. He kept every detail, trying to understand what was happening and looking for something concrete that could justify his suspicions. Deep down, he still wished he was mistaken, still wanted to believe that the problem lay in his own imagination, that perhaps it was just tiredness distorting his perception of reality. A few days later, while Laura said she was at another event, Adam decided to check what was going on. He went to the gallery where she was supposed to be, but upon arriving, he found the place closed, without any sign of activity. It was like a cold blow, a silent confirmation that something was deeply wrong. He felt his heart racing, and his body was filled with a feeling of disbelief and despair. That was the moment he realized that, perhaps, there was no going back. Adam returned home that night determined to find out the truth. Every silence and every absent look from Laura began to fit into a dark puzzle, and he decided that if he was being betrayed, he would not allow it to remain hidden. On a sunny Saturday morning, as Laura got ready for another exhibition, Adam watched her silently, as if saying goodbye to something he had always cherished. Her voice, happy and distant, was the last confirmation that something very important had changed between them. After she left, he took the car and followed her, keeping a safe distance. The tension in his chest was almost unbearable, and he felt his stomach drop with every mile they covered. After almost half an hour, he saw her stop in front of an isolated restaurant, far from the city center. She got out of the car, fixing her hair and smiling in a way Adam hadn't seen in a while. And then he saw him, the man who was waiting for her outside, with a carefree smile, without any guilt or fear. They greeted each other with a brief but intimate kiss, enough to let Adam know that here was the confirmation he feared. He remained in the car, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly, watching the two enter the restaurant as if they were a normal couple, without a shadow of remorse. He felt a mixture of pain and disbelief, the feeling that the ground had been ripped out from under his feet. He wondered how someone he had shared a life with could just erase everything and act as if he had never existed. It was as if the love they had built together had been dissolved without any explanation, without him even having the chance to fight for it. As he watched the restaurant move around, a cold anger began to wash over him, replacing the initial shock. He had dedicated himself, worked hard, and put all his hopes and trust into that relationship. Betrayal was not just a breach of commitment, but a blow to everything he believed in, everything he had strived to maintain. He felt each breath heavy, his chest tight, but he knew he needed to control his emotions. He couldn't act hot-headed, he didn't want to confront her impulsively. Instead, Adam got out of the car, with steady steps, walked to the entrance of the restaurant. He went in and hid at a table away, from where he could watch Laura and her lover laughing, toasting, as if they were two people in love and free from any responsibility. Her image, so familiar and yet so strange, cut through him like a sharp blade. The woman he loved, the woman he had made plans with and built a life with, was now a stranger before him, someone he could barely connect with. When the waiter passed by, Adam called him and asked him to hand over a ring in private, the one he had worn since the day they made their vows to each other. The ring was not only a symbol of their commitment, but a bitter reminder that he had been loyal while she betrayed him. The waiter hesitated upon understanding the unusual request, but accepted, taking the ring with a curious look and then heading to Laura's table. Adam watched with tense serenity, every second feeling like a pivotal moment. He watched as the waiter handed over the ring, saw Laura's confused look turn into silent shock. The lover looked from one to the other, not understanding what was happening, but Laura knew instantly. She knew that he knew, that everything they had built was hanging by a thread. Adam waited. Sitting in a corner armchair, his impassive expression hid the inner storm that consumed him. Laura and her lover, still perplexed by the ring given, looked around, trying to understand if it was some bad joke. Laura's eyes finally fixed on him. She lost her breath, as if struck by an invisible blow, her face changing color as she tried to regain control in front of the man with whom she had shared years of her life. She stood up, shakily, approaching with cautious steps, leaving her lover behind, who watched her in confusion. Adam remained silent, his gaze fixed on her, without any trace of emotion. When she stopped before him, the silence between them was almost palpable. Finally, she broke the silence, her voice wavering. "Why are you here, Anne? This alliance, what does it mean?" Adam looked at her with an unsettling calm, his dark eyes fixed on her, as if they saw beyond her appearance. "You know exactly what it means, Laura." She tried to respond, but the words seemed to catch in her throat. He continued, his voice low but firm. 15 years, Laura. 15 years that I gave to you, my trust, my love, my life. And you, throw it all away. Why? What else could I have done? Laura swallowed hard, looking away, but he didn't let her get away. "Look at me," he ordered. She looked up, her lips parted in a silent plea for understanding. "Adam, I don't know what to say, it's too late for apologies," he interrupted, each word filled with a pain he could barely hide. "You've already said everything I needed to hear, with your actions." With every second that passed, she seemed to shrink before him, as if Adam's words dismantled the image she had built for herself. She tried to touch his hand, but he drew back, cold. "You don't want to listen to me, then?" she whispered, her voice breaking. He gave a slight, bitter smile. "Listen to what, Laura?" "That this was a mistake." "What do you regret?" "There are no excuses that can erase what you did." He paused, his gaze penetrating. But I want you to understand what happens now. She looked at him, confused. What do you mean? Adam took a deep breath, his voice coming out more controlled than he expected. I thought I knew what love was, Laura. I thought marriage was an unbreakable commitment. But what you did changed everything. And fortunately, before I got married, I had the good sense to protect everything I built. She frowned, not understanding. Adam, what are you saying? He crossed his arms, with an expression that was both calm and devastating. Do you remember our prenuptial contract? Her face turned pale. What? That was years ago. Why did you? I remember, Laura. And you better remember too. Adam watched her reactions with a steady gaze, without looking away. In our contract, there is a very specific clause, one that you may have forgotten about over the years, but which will now be the only thing you will need to worry about. She began to shake, and he could see the terror growing in her eyes, as if she finally understood the scope of what was about to happen. Adam, please, what are you trying to say? You can't be serious. I'm more serious than ever, Laura, he replied, his voice low and icy. The contract says that in the event of infidelity on your part, you lose all rights to what we have together. All the possessions, the money, the house, everything. You don't get anything. She took a step back, shocked. That can't be true. Adam, you're kidding. That was a long time ago, we never took it seriously. I took it, Laura. And now you're going to have to deal with the consequences. Adam crossed his arms, unshakable. You were the one who chose to throw our marriage away. And by that choice, you will lose more than just my respect. You will lose everything. Laura shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. She began to speak, stumbling over her words, a desperate attempt to explain the inexplicable. Adam, please, I was confused, that's all. This doesn't mean anything. You know that I love you, that I always have. It was just a slip that will cost you dearly, he interrupted her. You thought you could get away with it, but it ends here. Adam felt the weight of his own words, but remained unshakable. Now, Laura, I want you to leave the house. Tomorrow itself. This is your last night. Her eyes widened, a mixture of desperation and pleading showing in her expression. You can't do this to me, Adam. I have nowhere to go. Please, I made a mistake, but it can't end like this. He looked at her for a moment, and for the first time, a spark of pain flashed in his eyes. But at the same time, he knew there was no going back. She had broken something inside him that couldn't be fixed. Laura, I loved you like I never imagined loving anyone. And now, I have to live with the fact that I was betrayed, that everything we built together was an illusion. He paused, his gaze steady but dark. You chose this path. Now, you'll have to walk through it alone. She swallowed hard, tears streaming down her face, but she knew he wouldn't change his mind. Adam got up, without saying anything else, and left the restaurant. She stood there, looking at the ring on her hand, the symbol of a commitment that was now nothing more than a bitter reminder of what she had lost. Laura remained in the restaurant, feeling paralyzed as she processed the impact of what had just happened. Around him, the atmosphere seemed distorted, the voices of other customers muffled, the lights, once welcoming, now blinding. The lover watched the scene, still in disbelief, without fully understanding the depth of what was happening. Laura, however, had no doubts. Adam's every word had been like a sentence, and she knew everything he said was final. The ring in her hand now weighed unbearably, a weight that symbolized broken promises and a crumbling future. Trying to catch her breath, Laura looked around, desperate for some kind of support, a word of comfort that, she knew, wouldn't come from anyone there. The lover, already uncomfortable with the intensity of the situation, began to mumble a few words of apology, shaking his head from side to side. He tried to take Laura's hand, but she took it away abruptly, as if she was only now realizing what that approach represented and how fragile the support she sought from him was. Still in shock, Laura got up and left the restaurant. Each step felt heavier, as if Adam's words continued to echo in her mind, shattering any remaining hope she might have had. Outside, the night was cold, but the feeling of emptiness growing inside her was what really made her shiver. Laura knew that her home, the place she built with Adam and that held years of memories, was now beyond her reach. The world, which until recently seemed full of possibilities, now seemed shrunken, a closed space where everything reminded her of her mistake. She began to walk around the city, her thoughts clouded, as she tried to digest the consequences of what she had done. With each street he walked, memories of the past with Adam emerged painfully, like a tape that rewound, showing moments when they were happy, when nothing seemed capable of shaking what they had. She remembered every promise, every conversation about the future, how he was the foundation of everything she had built in her life. The safety, the support, the unconditional love, all of that was now out of her reach. After hours of wandering, Laura finally found the strength to return to the house that, in a few hours, would no longer be her home. He entered slowly, afraid of finding Adam, but the house was silent. Every corner was a painful reminder that the moment she walked through the door for the last time, everything that was familiar and comforting would be left behind. It was as if the walls, the photographs in the frames, every piece of furniture, were silently witnessing his farewell. As she climbed the stairs to her room, she noticed that some of Adam's belongings were missing, as if he had already begun to detach himself, to erase the traces of their life together. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring into space. I knew there were no more excuses to be made, no justifications. She tried to think of what she could have said or done differently, but regret was now a shadow that enveloped her irremediably. The house seemed colder and more desolate, and silence was now his only companion. Laura realized that, in addition to losing the material support and stability that Adam represented, she was losing something even more valuable, the part of herself that, alongside him, believed to be whole, reliable, loved. This internal emptiness was overwhelming, and she knew it would take a long time for the pain to subside, if that were ever possible. At dawn, Laura began packing her belongings. Each item he placed in the boxes seemed to carry an emotional weight, a memory that now turned into a farewell. The objects that were once just everyday details, a sculpture bought on a trip, a book he had given her as a gift, a painting she had painted inspired by him, were now symbols of a love that she had destroyed. The process of packing everything seemed eternal, and each object she placed in the boxes made her relive the moments they had shared, as if she was slowly burning each memory. Adam returned mid-morning, cool and resolute. He watched her without saying a word as she, with shaking hands, tried to explain her feelings for the last time. Adam, I know that nothing I say will change what I did. I destroyed what we had, I know that. But I wanted you to know that this was never about you. It was a loss of myself. Adam looked at her with a penetrating gaze, without showing any trace of empathy. Laura, you destroyed me. It made me question every moment we lived together, every promise we made. There are no excuses that can fix this. You made your choices, and now you're going to live with them. She lowered her head, unable to look at him. The silence that followed was almost unbearable, and Laura felt the weight of physical and emotional separation growing by the second. With everything packed, she finally left the house. Each step felt like a painful goodbye, and the feeling of emptiness was overwhelming. Adam remained in the hallway, watching her leave, knowing that, no matter how much that situation destroyed him, it was the only possible path for both of them. When the door finally closed behind her, Adam let out a long sigh, a mix of relief and sadness. He knew this was just the first step in a long recovery process, but he was determined to move forward. Months have passed since Laura left the house where she made so many memories with Adam. She tried to get back on her feet, but the emptiness was constant, a painful presence at every moment. Her attempts to find her old life became a burden that she carried with the same sense of loss and regret that had accompanied her since the night Adam gave her the ring in the restaurant. Every time she thought of him, she felt a sharp pain, a weight of a future she threw away for a fleeting moment of dissatisfaction. Laura struggled to maintain a minimum of stability, but, without financial resources and separated from her previous friends, who now saw in her just the shadow of a person who had betrayed the man who loved her most, every day seemed like a battle without victories. The financial situation became increasingly delicate. Without Adam's support and with her reputation damaged, she was forced to look for temporary work to survive. His paintings, which were once his passion and escape, were now a reflection of an unattainable past. The inspiration that used to flow was replaced by a sadness that stained her canvases, reflecting the loss she felt inside. Over time, the few people who still kept in touch with her moved away, unable to understand or accept the betrayal that Laura had committed. Adam, in turn, remained determined to rebuild his life. The first few months were difficult, the feeling of betrayal still gnawed at him, but he channeled the pain into rediscovering himself. He became more involved in work, made new contacts, and, little by little, rebuilt a routine free from the remnants of his past with Laura. The house, which he had renovated to become their home, was now a space for personal renewal. He removed every trace of Laura's presence, every photo, every memory, transforming the environment to reflect who he was now, a man who, despite being hurt, was willing to move on. The emotional impact Laura had on him was still profound, but Adam decided not to dwell on the bitterness. He took up new hobbies, made sincere friendships, and slowly allowed himself to believe that it was possible to rebuild his life. In a chance encounter, Adam met someone who sparked a new interest in him. The conversation, light and unpretentious, brought back a sense of normality that he thought he had lost forever. Unhurriedly and cautiously, he began to explore this new possibility, aware that he was now stronger and less naive. One day, while at work, Adam received a letter from Laura. He read it with the serenity of someone who had already overcome pain. On paper, she apologized once again, confessing how much her life had changed since the end of her marriage and the constant regret that consumed her. The letter was a desperate plea for forgiveness, but Adam read it without any desire to respond. He understood, in that moment, that his time with Laura, although meaningful, was part of a past from which he now felt free. With a calm gesture, he put the letter in a drawer and decided to move forward, without looking back. Meanwhile, Laura was still in her solitary routine. She was trying to find a way to live with the regret and guilt, but the loneliness was relentless. As she observed life around her, she realized what she had lost, not just a husband, but the possibility of a true and solid life, something that now seemed unattainable. The betrayal had cost her everything, and memories of the past haunted her, reminding her of a time when she was happy without knowing it. She, who once longed for new experiences and adventures, now wanted only one thing, the peace she never found since she destroyed what she had with Adam. In the end, everyone followed their own path, but in opposite ways. Adam found the strength to start over and rebuilt his life on new, solid foundations, while Laura, sunk in regret, lived in the shadow of the past she herself had destroyed. Did you like this story? Leave your comment and share your opinion. We want to know what you thought and hear your perspective on what each character experienced. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more intense stories like this. And remember, here, we do not support any kind of cheating.